Could have the members and the witnesses take the places, please. Okay, I'd like to thank our witnesses and welcome them here today. We have from the National Airlines Council of Canada, Mr. Marc-Andre O'Rourke, Executive Director, Mr. Samuel Elvesy, Senior Director, Corporate Safety and Environment, Air Canada, Mr. Captain Scott Wilson, Vice President, Safety, Security and Quality from WestJet, David DeVoe, Vice President, Safety, Quality and Environment with Jazz Aviation, and Captain Jacques Mignot, Senior Director, Safety, Quality and Security, Air Transit. So thank you, gentlemen, for being here, and I understand, Mr. O'Rourke, you're going to lead off. So.
Thank you very much. Good morning. Bonjour. Thank you to the committee for the invitation to appear here today as part of your review of the Canadian transportation safety regime. It really is, we really do appreciate the opportunity to be able to discuss our experience with the transportation of dangerous goods and the implementation of safety management systems, or SMS for short, as it relates to aviation in Canada. As the Chair mentioned, my name is Marc-Andre O'Rourke, Executive Director of the National Airlines Council of Canada. The NACC is a trade association that represents Canada's major airlines. Our members are Air Canada, Air Transat, Jazz, and WestJet. Nous promouvons des déplacements aériens sûrs.
We promote safe, sustainable, and competitive aircraft transport in collaboration with the government and industry stakeholders to promote the implementation of policies, regulations and legislation which supports the crucial world-class transport system for economic growth.
To represent the combined expertise of our member carriers. Our subcommittees, namely safety, flight operations, and maintenance and engineering, work together to maintain and enhance world-class safety standards. Given SMS's systematic approach, it's very important to note the collaboration and information sharing between all areas of an airline, from the actual operations to all the support functions. SMS is not only the concern of safety departments, it's a company-wide shared responsibility. Today, I'm joined with representatives of our safety subcommittee who will share their expertise with you in a few minutes. To my right, Samuel Elvesy, Senior Director at Air Canada. To his right, David DeVoe, Vice President at Jazz Aviation. To my left, Captain Scott Wilson, Vice President at WestJet. And to his left, Captain Jacques Mignot, Senior Director at Air Transat. NAC member airlines directly employ over 43,000 people and carry more than 50 million passengers a year. Together, our members serve more than 60 Canadian communities and represent 87% of the domestic traffic and 64% of total airline traffic in Canada. Most importantly, our members' deliberate and unwavering commitment to safety is ingrained in everything they do. Nothing is more important to our members than making sure the passenger gets to his destination safely. Aviation is the safest mode of transport. Today, modern aviation is safer than it's ever been before. This achievement is not the work of chance. It's the result of a comprehensive and systematic approach to safety taken by the industry. To the NACC Airlines, safety is not just a matter of following the rules. Safety is about proactively managing risks and hazards that go well beyond the minimum requirements established by civil aviation authorities. Safety is the foundation that truly underpins the way an airline is run. Our carriers have embraced the principles of safety management system and embarked on a journey which has brought significant and meaningful enhancements to the safety culture that already existed. It's important to note that SMS is internationally recognized by the safety and aviation communities as the most advanced approach to mitigating and ensuring a proper and safe aviation system. At the outset, I think it's important to take a minute to describe what SMS really is. An SMS system is a holistic approach where policies, processes, and systems are used to proactively identify, mitigate, and eliminate safety hazards and risks. It means that every activity an airline engages in, whether it be the actual flying of the aircraft or the maintenance of the engines, or any of the literally thousands of steps it takes to get from point A to point B, each of these activities are designed in a way that eliminates or reduces the potential for error or accident. Today, I can state unequivocally that transformation towards an improved safety culture has taken place at all levels of our member airlines. From the frontline employees to management to the most senior ranks, our members are fully engaged. This company-wide commitment to safety, again, it's a company-wide, all departments are involved, and accountability is a hallmark of an SMS framework. I would like to be very clear about the fact that the SMS implementation does not mean that airlines are policing themselves with no government inspection or oversight. SMS is a partnership whereby airlines are required to implement even more sophisticated oversight systems than ever before. No one within the industry is advocating that the oversight and continued surveillance functions have become redundant. On the contrary, certification and oversight activities of Transport Canada are more important than ever and are essential parts of Transport Canada's role. In fact, under an SMS approach, Transport Canada oversight is much more rigorous and meaningful. SMS adds a layer of safety to what is already the safest industry in the world, safest transportation industry in the world. SMS increases oversight by utilizing even more sophisticated risk management techniques, including enhanced two-way communication and data trending. SMS is applied on top of existing safety and quality tools. The SMS process is not just a general review of procedures and data, as it has been suggested by some. SMS includes digging into specific areas of safety to find evidence of what has been done to address these issues. Airlines must show Transport Canada that they have, 1, identified the root cause of potential problem, have taken corrective and preventive measures, and 3, verified the effectiveness of those measures. SMS seeks to find unknown risks, which is far beyond what a regulator on-site inspection can ever do. However, for oversight to remain effective, it too must evolve. The goal of SMS is to move to a proactive state of safety, a more assertive role in which the air carrier collects and analyzes data to understand the hazards and the safety barriers needed to avert possible negative outcomes. Any suggestion that air travelers have been exposed to a higher risk as a result of SMS is completely irresponsible and unfounded. It bears repeating that safety is of the utmost importance to our members, and their individual and collective safety records speak for themselves. I'd like now to turn briefly to the issue of dangerous goods, because I know it's also a focus of the committee's review. As with other modes of transport, the transportation of dangerous goods by air is governed by the Transportation of Dangerous Goods regulations. These regulations incorporate by reference the International Civil Aviation Organization technical instructions. These instructions establish the rules for the safe transport of dangerous goods by air, both within Canada and internationally. It's important to note that the transportation of dangerous goods is highly regulated by a robust and sophisticated international framework. The aviation industry and our members are committed to the proactive and continuous improvement of its standards, processes, and training requirements with respect to transporting dangerous goods by air. NACC members are actively involved in the ongoing revision and updating of the international standards. Pour finir, je tiens à réaffirmer que la sécurité.
Closing, I'd like to reaffirm that safety is the top priority of the Council and its members. Our carriers are continuing to commit strongly to a SMS system that is strong. We know that airline safety can only be ensured thanks to ongoing vigilance. Of course, we are more than willing to cooperate with Transport Canada, this committee, and other stakeholders to ensure ongoing excellence in airline safety throughout Canada.
The members of our Safety Committee to briefly introduce themselves. As you will see, we have brought with us today representatives that are well placed to discuss issues dealing with SMS implementation and the transportation of dangerous goods. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup.
Gentlemen, we have some time. Any comments? Mr. DeVoe, do you want to go first? Or?
Okay, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. It's as Marc-Andre mentioned, it's not only a privilege, but it's a good opportunity for us to appear today and help to inform the dialogue around the topic. So, as mentioned, I'm David DeVoe. I'm the Vice President of Safety, Quality, Environment for Jazz. I also have the privilege of being the chair of the Safety Subcommittee for NAC with these dedicated and respected folks that are at the table here. I'll also mention that I'm also the chair of the Safety Council of the U.S.-based Regional Airline Association, and I mention that because it provides perhaps a unique perspective of SMS from outside of our nation and how it's seen by other countries as well. One of the things you'll find about aviation safety professionals is they're very passionate about the topic, and I hope that we can provide some value here. In terms of a few comments, just to open up, I'd like to be quite blunt, if I could, with respect to SMS and how it's viewed, I think, by many colleagues in this realm. It's very much a set of basic principles and concepts that are not new, in fact, and are based on quality management and organizational management sciences. Really, in terms of its effectiveness, I must respectfully but bluntly say that questioning the value of an enterprise system like SMS is really not a rational argument by those who are informed about what SMS actually is. It's very much, if I can draw a parallel, akin to a financial management system or a human resource management system. It's a sophisticated, structured program based on very sound principles, and really there's no other way to view its impact on aviation but an evolution of what was already a very strong safety basis, certainly in Canada. And as I mentioned, with respect to the perspective that others may have on SMS, I have to be, I'd be very clear about this, that when I talk to colleagues in the United States in particular, and even overseas, Canada's aviation safety system is considered to be the best and safest system on the planet, frankly. And indeed, I know that they collaborate with and they discuss SMS and what's happening in Canada, both with operators and with Transport Canada. But for us, and speaking for Jazz, what SMS has done is provide a framework to increase the sophistication of what we have always done in aviation with additional tools and create a much more integrated way of managing risk within the organization. And there are many focus areas that SMS has brought for airlines, including a very important focus on organizational culture, a shared culture of safety so that it's every single person in the organization who shares the accountability to ensure that risk is identified and managed properly. It also focuses very carefully on organizational factors, and if you were to step back in time, you would find that the focus on safety in general terms, including aviation, at a certain point was very much about the individual and perhaps what the individual didn't do or whether there was error involved. But SMS creates a need for us to examine what the organization is doing, systemic issues, root causes, and again, I've used the word sophistication, but it really has brought a new layer of sophistication to what we do. And it really has done this, again, speaking for Jazz, in my case, it's provided a roadmap for us to improve on, again, a very strong basis of safety. And with respect to our interaction with the regulator, it's also changed that in a very positive way as well. Although we continue to see the direct surveillance and inspection activity, our interactions and our work with the regulator is frankly much more meaningful than it has been in the past. There is a much greater expectation on airlines under an SMS program that we must demonstrate to the regulator. And certainly if the committee is interested in hearing some more examples on that, I'm happy to expand. But I did want to just open up with those initial comments to offer the perspective of one airline.
Okay, thank you, Mr. DeVolt. Mr. Elfsey, any comments? Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's a privilege to be here before you this morning. I'll just provide just a brief background on my role at Air Canada. I've been with Air Canada just over 26 years, just approaching 27 years. I've had the privilege to serve as the Senior Director of Safety, Environment and Quality at Air Canada. I've also served on other positions within the airline over the course of those years within flight operations and in other areas. I've also been fortunate to have sat on a number of working groups sessions and meetings over the years with Transport Canada and the early development and then ongoing promulgation of the rules associated with SMS. So I have the benefit and the luxury of recalling and understanding what the spirit and the intent was during the early regulatory development. The scope and responsibilities and the accountabilities that I have across our profile really speaks to mostly to the oversight that we have as a department within Air Canada. We're operationally independent, reporting up to Mr. Kalen Romanescu, who's our President and CEO, as well as reporting up to our Board of Directors for safety oversight as well as environmental oversight. The operational independence is actually quite important because it allows for us to independently view across the organization the ongoing effectiveness and management of not only our safety management system but our environmental management system as well as our occupational health and safety management system. So that role really is to test, monitor the effectiveness of our SMS and look at through the various reporting as well as the addressing the safety hazards that the organization faces. I'll also echo David's comments relative to how we're regarded
within the industry on an international level. I have the luxury of sitting on various committees across various associations, both at IATA as well as the Airlines for America as associate members. And our safety management system is regarded as one of the most robust and rigorous performance-based systems that are out there. In fact, some international theaters, in fact, don't have a regulatory requirement for SMS. So we're often sought after for our expertise. And I'll also mention that outside of my professional life, I chair a hospital board in the City of Toronto. And I mention that because over the years, given our expertise associated with the implementation of SMS, we're finding that we're crossing the boundaries and assisting other sectors, other safety-sensitive sectors, and how to apply the principles of safety management systems and to benefit their organization to reduce adverse outcomes. And it's quite an exciting period of time because others are benefiting from our knowledge and our experience, and they are coming to us for that. I'll leave my comments to that, and really will appreciate any questions that you might have associated with our experience. I could tell you that our interactions with the inspectors within Transport Canada, to David's point, has evolved and has changed. On a regular, I don't want to say regular basis, but quite often during the quarter, it is not uncommon for us to have and invite inspectors to sit in on our management review process, which is quite rigorous. It goes through many layers. They've sat in on our corporate safety board where we report out to our CEO. They're invited to participate and to listen in on those meetings as we look to discover our hazards and report out to our management team on our risks and our safety profile. I'll leave it at that, and then welcome any additional questions you might have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Alvesy. Captain Wilson, briefly.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and I thank the committee for welcoming us here today. It's a great honor and privilege to be able to share our experiences with the implementation of safety management systems here in Canada. A bit of background for myself. I've been 13 years with WestJet, a little over 20 years in the industry, primarily in flight operational roles prior to taking on this role in the safety, security, and quality side for the past 3 years. From a WestJet perspective and a greater NAC perspective, I won't touch on some of the technical details that David and Sam have quite eloquently put on, but I'm going to talk a little bit about the culture side. And obviously coming from a culturally enabled organization such as WestJet, the big differentiator that we found with safety management systems is how it takes that cultural sort of envelope and leverages that across the system. We may have safety in our names or titles here representing the 4 airlines, but the reality is for the 43,000 frontline employees, they're the front face of safety every day in our airlines, and the safety management system is to enable their voice and their opportunity to be a very enabled and active piece of safety within the airline system operating across Canada every day. With that, I'll sort of close that off. Thank you again, and we look forward to the discussion and the opportunity.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Wilson. Captain Mignon.
Monsieur le Président, Madame, Messieurs les députés.
Mr. Chair, members, I'd like to make a number of remarks. I'm an employee of Air Transat and have been so for approximately 16 years. I spent 20 years prior to that in the Canadian Armed Forces in the Air Force. For the past 6 years, I have been the manager responsible for implementing the safety management system at Air Transat. In this role, my primary responsibility has been to look at all sectors of activity for the airline, whether it be airline safety, cabin safety, aircraft maintenance safety, and handling services safety on the ground. I'd like to reiterate the remarks made by my colleagues The SMS enables us to involve all employees in the common objective of providing a safe operation. The SMS also provides us with an opportunity to form partnerships with industry stakeholders. That's airline control, aircraft managers, or rather air terminal managers, management of incidents, and we work together to prevent incidents and to provide for corrective measures that are appropriate. This system allows us to manage events and ensure the safety of our carriers.
Questioning, Mr. Mai, 7 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Merci aux témoins d'être ici aujourd'hui.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thanks to the witnesses for being here. Thank you for your presentations. I'd like to start by getting you to comment. In April 2014, there was a report, or should I say a survey, of aviation inspectors and also of SMS. Apparently, 80% of inspectors believe that air travellers are exposed to a higher risk because of SMS. This is an increase compared to 2007, where about 67% of inspectors foresaw that air travel was less safe. I'd like to know whether it's your sense that SMS is good for the industry, whether it's a good system, and what do you think about the fact that inspectors themselves believe this? Well, listen, we're very familiar with that survey. To be frank with you, it's difficult to get a handle on those results and to make sense of them. As far as we're concerned, and as Mr. DeVaux explained, implementing a safety management system, well, SMSs are recognised internationally. They have proven their mettle. The system is a method to study the root cause of a failure or a defect, and also enables us to take a step back and to look at the overall system in order to understand the root cause, but also to determine whether the system itself contributed to the incident. Now, in this survey, there was a suggestion, it would seem, that there are fewer inspections. Once again, we have trouble understanding where that comes from. The level of oversight is in fact the same. Actually, it's been enhanced. And there is dialogue, communication between carriers and inspectors. Well, my concern is that those who uphold are inspectors themselves. They're the ones out on the ground. They're the ones that are looking at the aircraft. If you look at the figures and you ask the question, or you don't understand this report, you said, could you tell us how it is that in 2014 rather, how many inspectors there are overall? Answer: unfortunately, I can't answer that question. Perhaps you should speak to Transport Canada. Well, based on the figures that I have, there were 382 inspectors in 2014, whereas in previous years there were 535. Unfortunately, I'm not familiar with that. But what I can tell you, and members will confirm this, is that oversight is better under a safety management system. Well, that's what we've understood also. We conducted a study of rail. We've been told that the systems are great, that companies are very happy with them, but even when the Auditor General looked at this issue, it became obvious that Transport Canada didn't have the time to check on these systems. Now, CN, when they appeared, said that perhaps it might be possible to submit a model of the system so that we can look at the system. We know that Transport Canada doesn't have the resources to determine whether the systems are safe. Would you be prepared to table an example of an SMS before the committee? Well, I'd have to consult with my members on that, but a priori, I have no problem with that. You know, what I would say is that transparency is crucial, not only internally. It's important that employees are familiar with the SMS. Well, if you make a comparison with railways, railway employees have said that often they weren't involved. Sometimes they were part of a committee, but they didn't wield much influence. Some said that they weren't consulted at all. Mr. Mignot said that at Air Transat they are consulted to some extent. Could you please give me a sense of what sort of consultative process there is with employees?
Ça, c'est un des avantages d'un système, c'est que
That is one of the advantages of this kind of system. All levels of the organisation are involved, but perhaps I'll hand the floor over to someone with a bit more experience. To respond specifically to your question regarding the involvement of employees, we have a voluntary reporting system that encourages employees to inform us, to step forward and inform us of any incidents that have taken place as part of operations. This is a confidential reporting system which ensures that there are no disciplinary measures that could possibly ever take place whatsoever. So there's no hurdle for employees to speak up. This enables us to get our hands on information, to take action, and to benefit all employees at the end of the day. We work hand in hand with employee associations that are fully fledged partners in this program. To my mind, this system provides for greater visibility around incidents that occur. Now, in response to your comment about Transport Canada's oversight activities, my experience is that the oversight currently of this system by Transport Canada is different to what was occurred in the past. However, in my opinion, it's the oversight is more in depth than it used to be. So if you look at how carriers address problems, you look at how systems snap into line and respond symbiotically and take the appropriate measures, and how these measures are verified to ensure that they are adequate. That's all important.
Mr. McGinney, 7 minutes.
Chair, thank you very much. Good morning, gentlemen. Thanks for being here. Let me ask you, first of all, in the system we now have, this SMS system, would you agree that in order for the SMS system to be thorough and safe and reliable, because we're talking here about reliability, we're talking about brand, we're talking about market share, we're talking about operating your businesses, generating wealth and value, would you agree that for the SMS system to be fully functioning, that we need, in partnership with the SMS activities undertaken by your member companies, we need proper enforcement, regulation, inspection, and audit?
I do agree very much wholeheartedly. I will talk to the enforcement piece, though, a little bit. And what we want to ensure is that, as Jacques mentioned there, for our frontline employees to feel very comfortable about being part of the system, about being encouraged and enabled, they need to have that non-punitive aspect. So the enforcement piece is there as much as it ever was. But basically, it's when it sees the layers have failed up to that point, and that would be the proper piece for it. We very much, as member airlines, point to the fact that our success of safety management systems in Canada have been very much to the strong partnership, cooperation, and the value that's provided every day by our inspector group that we have very close working relationships
Partnership and cooperation with whom?
with Transport Canada.
With Transport Canada.
Absolutely.
So we agree then, right?
We
We
do.
agree that we can't really have an SMS system unless one of the integral partners, Transport Canada, is doing its share of the job, right? Right?
Absolutely.
Great. Well, let's just review some of the things we've heard from Transport Canada's own air inspectors. The aviation inspectors who work for Transport Canada conducted a very detailed survey. Here are a few of the things they've told us. They say that Transport Canada's safety management systems, the way they're structured, prevent the correction of safety problems in a timely fashion, up from 80% who worry this would be the case in the early days of the safety management system. 2/3 of the Minister's own inspectors are telling her that Transport Canada's safety management systems will actually increase the chances of a major aviation accident. The inspectors surveyed also say that as a result of the inspector shortage, airlines can now go as long as 5 years before a Transport Canada inspection is required. Right? We understand it's supposed to be happening on an annual basis. It may be happening for the large companies, but there are an awful lot of other companies that are not being caught. The inspectors also say in their survey, officials from the Minister's own department previously promised MPs on this committee that 30% of Transport Canada aviation inspections would be direct operational inspections, i.e. on-site aircraft and operational inspections, ramp checks, unannounced inspections, etc. Right? This conflicts with the findings of the inspector survey, which reports that inspectors spend almost no time on direct inspection. So I put a similar question to the rail industry representatives, the large companies, asking them whether they thought it was their responsibility to try to make sure that their partner in this safety system, the SMS system, that their partner was upholding their side of the deal, their bargain, their responsibility. So let me ask you, in the face of what we've heard from the inspectors who inspect your companies, what's your reaction?
Well, I'll start it off, and I know the rest will probably want to join in. When we talk to our inspectors, maybe I'll just provide the framework. As a large enterprise such as WestJet, Air Canada, Air Transat, and Jazz, we basically have designated individuals at the appropriate lead. We'll have a technical team lead for flight operations, a technical team lead for maintenance. They will then have a primary operations inspector for flight ops, a cabin safety inspector for
You'll forgive me, Mr. Wilson. I don't want to. I only have a fixed amount of time, and it's important to describe how the system works.
So,
but we're talking about the partnership here with Transport Canada.
Correct.
And I'm relying heavily, on behalf of my Conservative colleagues, on the Auditor General's report of April 3rd, 2012, which is, again, scathing in its criticism about air transportation safety. And I want to remind you at the same time that in the public accounts between 2011, 2012, and 2012, 2013, this government cut aviation safety by 11%. So on that basis, can you help us understand what's going on at Transport Canada? Don't you really want to know what's going on here? Don't you want to be able to tell your shareholders, your insurers, your corporate directors, your officers, your traveling public, that that part of the deal isn't actually being upheld?
Absolutely, but I mean, we can't speak to what's going on in Transport Canada, but we can speak to our interactions with the inspectors. And under an SMS system, the interactions are so much more meaningful. They address the root cause. They work backwards. They have to explain the mitigation measures. They have to show the mitigation measures have worked. I want to touch upon this because this is very important, because I know that survey, we've all seen the survey.
Well, apparently not, because when I asked the Minister about it in the House of Commons, she said she'd never seen it.
Well, I guess you'll have to follow up with the Minister.
But I do want to go back.
I can't let this out there. The suggestion that airlines go uninspected for a year or 3 or 5 is false and inaccurate. There is no scenario.
Fair enough. But let me ask you this. What overtures have you made to the government and the Minister of Transport Canada to get their act together and actually comply with the recommendations of the Auditor General from 2012, and make sure, don't you think you have an obligation as good corporate citizens to make it known to the regulator, who is your integral partner? We've all agreed, you've all admitted, you can't have an SMS without proper inspection. Don't you think it's your responsibility, or are you already making overtures to the government to say, hey government, you better get your act together on Transport Canada inspections here and safety audits, because that's part of the deal we've got with the Canadian public. because your license to operate isn't granted by Transport Canada. It's ultimately granted by the Canadian public.
Yeah,
Wouldn't you agree?
Well, I don't think it's fair to say that they don't have their act together. Our members work well with the inspectors.
So from your perspective, all inspections are satisfactory. There are no gaps. It's all being done in a timely fashion. Let me ask you, if that's the case, have you read the 2012 Auditor General Report?
At a time, Mr. McGinney, let Mr. O'Rourke or somebody answer.
May I address the members' questions, because I think they're relevant questions, but the question does presume that from the perspective and the experience of the operator, that there is a problem with regard to the oversight. And I can't speak to the motivations or characterizations in the survey. All I can speak to is fact and the experience that we have as operators. And frankly, I mentioned passion at the beginning in this realm, in safety, and it is frustrating for us to hear the characterizations that somehow Transport Canada has dissolved into the wind over this transition, where the reality, ironically, is quite the opposite. We still see Transport Canada inspectors on a regular basis with much of what you consider the traditional surveillance activity, whether they be check rides or visiting our dispatch centres. But what has been added on top of, not instead of, but on top of that activity is an interaction with us that requires us to peel back the layers of our organization and demonstrate to Transport Canada with respect to non-compliance, for example, exactly what causal factors were there, how we discovered the issues, how we were mitigating them, to demonstrate to the regulator that we understand why something may have happened and how we're ensuring that it doesn't happen again, and in fact even proving the effectiveness of our solutions. And this is all on top of traditional surveillance activity. So I just want to be clear, we can only speak to the facts and the experience that we have as operators, and we have a deeper and more meaningful oversight experience with Transport Canada than we have in the past.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Wool. Mr. Watson, 7 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'm not going to be asking questions on an outlier survey commissioned by a union that's principally against safety management systems, but we'll talk about the witnesses that are here today. Your safety management systems, and I want to speak to the member companies more specifically, the documentation that sets out your safety management systems that is to fulfill the components that you're mandated to have for safety management systems. Are those able to be tabled with the committee, or how large are we talking about the documentation that explains your safety management systems?
If I could comment on that, we've made reference a few times to the fact that safety is not sort of a corner of a building activity. The safety management system document set, in fact, comprises most of the operational documents across the organization. So it's infused and integrated into just about everything we do from a procedural and a policy perspective.
It's one of the things that not only the public struggles with, but of course even members of the committee. We don't read your safety management system. We don't know we know what the components are supposed to be in it, but we don't know how each of you satisfies that. Obviously, there won't be identical safety management systems other than the components themselves. There'll be some flexibility in how companies achieve the objectives in their safety management systems. We're trying to drive at whether anybody can table a safety management system with the committee, such that we can actually read how each of the companies match the components of a safety management system. I'm taking that nobody can table one.
What I can tell you is that there's nothing confidential in our one publication which addresses the overarching principles of our safety management system. We refer to it as our safety management manual. And the various parts of the organization use that to shape their unique features within the organization to address how they identify hazards, how they conduct risk assessments, how they move on the corrective actions. That publication is in fact submitted to our Transport Canada inspectors for review and approval, which makes it in fact a public document under access to information. So I would
rather than going through ATIP, would you table it with the committee?
I would have no concern in tabling the publication so you can see an example.
Okay. I don't know whether each of the member companies who are here today will be able to answer this, but how many inspections do you conduct of your own operations, and how many audits do you conduct, both of components and full system audits of your safety management systems?
Happy to take that one on.
Yep.
It's ongoing. And actually what we do is when you take a look at it, all of us have code sharing agreements, so we actually undergo ongoing audits by our code share partners. We're all members of IOSA, so the IATA is operational safety audit, so every 2 years we have a complete audit done to international standards, which includes safety management systems. And then
is that a full system-wide look at, or does that focus on components of your SMS?
No, basically the SMS is new because most other carriers in the world weren't up to Canada's safety management standards, so we've been the only airlines actually been able to fulfill that for the past couple of years.
So every 2 years your full safety management system is audited by an independent third party?
That's correct, including flight operations, technical operations, cabin safety, cargo, the entire gamut.
I'd like, for the committee's benefit for each of the companies, if you could come back with with numbers on how many inspections you conduct and how many audits you conduct. We'd like to see what the industry is doing. On the flip side, I'm also going to ask you, because Transport Canada is supposed to be in the business of oversight, and of course this committee wants to ensure that we keep Transport Canada accountable in its functions, if you can tell us how many inspections are done of your operations by Transport Canada, and how many audits are being done by Transport Canada on either components or full system audits. We'd like a sense of that too. That would help us close the loop on what your interaction actually is with Transport Canada. Are you willing to provide that, or we'd like to see that, I think, at the committee? Okay, straightforward.
I'd just like, if I could provide some clarification. When you speak of inspection, just for the members to understand, there are many layers of quality activity that happen within the carrier. So we have everything from quality control inspection activities right at the practitioner level, whether that be maintenance or even vendors. We have quality assurance activities that are daily surveillance activities that happen within the business units, and then we have formal audit programs internally. So quite literally, depending on the layers, the degree of inspection you're talking about, this happens many hundreds of times a day. So it's a very ubiquitous system, and that's, SMS is essentially a quality management system, right, detailed for safety. So this is, there's an enormous amount of activity that is weaved throughout pretty much everything that's done within the operation.
Okay. Worker input. Are workers at your individual companies involved in every facet of safety in a proactive way? Are they involved in helping the company determine its risk assessments of its operations or changes in its operations? Are they surveyed for their perceptions on safety in the workplace? Are they involved in terms of determining what the remedial actions for problems identified in your audits or inspections? How much integration do you have? How joint is the approach in health and safety within the safety management system at each of your companies?
I'll offer some opening comments on that. Right from the foundations of SMS, employees were very involved in the development of policies and processes. But even once SMS was implemented, there's many layers that we directly involve line employees. You mentioned risk assessments as a good example. When we're looking at changes to the organization, introducing something where there could be a potential hazard involved, we involve direct line employees in addition to SMEs and subject matter experts. And that entire risk assessment process is to ensure that we properly identify where there could be hazards introduced to the workplace, and then work with folks who know the job in order to develop mitigations and solutions, which goes to your question about being involved in actually coming up with problem solving. And I should add, you've used the term health and safety. Of course, you'd be familiar with the requirements for federally regulated industries under the Labour Code, so there is also additional processes under our OSH programs to consult with employees as well.
Were you asking for information?
Yeah, I'd like each of the. It's tough in 7 minutes to kind of question and answer and get into these in any amount of depth. But if each of the member companies could detail what actions or where their workers are actually involved in that health and safety program.
Okay, we haven't got time for that, Mr. Watson, but maybe through the course there'll probably be.
That's what I was asking.
Very good. Now we'll move to Mr. Braid, 7 minutes.
Yes, I'm here, Mr. Chair. Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here this morning and for participating in this study. Mr. O'Rourke, I wanted to start with a couple of questions for you. The National Airlines Council of Canada was formed in 2008, as I understand. Could you just briefly describe why the council was formed?
Absolutely. As you may know, there's another association of air carriers, the Air Transport Association of Canada. Our members were part of that association. In 2008, my understanding is that given the nature of the operations of the members of the NACC and given the nature of the membership of ATAC, it was felt that to be maybe to move issues of concern to large airlines, because ATAC has many types of members. It's got flight schools, it's got smaller operators, which is great. But at the time, it was felt that the interest of large carriers would be maybe better served in a smaller association dedicated to the issues of large airlines. Given the nature of the business, it's very different to operate a flight school or a helicopter operation than a major, what they call Part 705 carriers.
Okay, thank you. In your opening remarks, you described that the process of ensuring safety with respect to our airline industry in Canada, the SMS process and system is very much a partnership between the airlines in the country and the regulator, Transport Canada. Could you elaborate on that statement, and could you describe if there are any areas for improvement with respect to that partnership?
Sure. Well, it is, we believe, a partnership, especially given the nature of the enhanced interaction with Transport Canada inspectors now. The SMS framework provides, it's not simply a compliance issue or kind of focusing narrowly maybe on the particular issue that was discovered. Under SMS, there's a lot more dialogue with the inspector, and kind of a two-way conversation. So that's the partnership. It's not the simple compliance of coming in and checking. It's let's engage into a more robust, more meaningful conversation. What can we do to or what improvements can be made? I've asked that. Honestly, what we would like to see is let the system operate the way it's supposed to operate. The system has an inherent mechanism to always kind of proactively identify potential hazards. If we just let the system do what it's supposed to do, I think we will even see even better results.
Very good. As a committee member, whenever I participate in a study like this, I always find it helpful to understand how Canada compares internationally. Could each or any of you, all of you, perhaps comment on that with respect to airline safety in Canada and the regulatory framework and regime in Canada? How do we compare to other countries around the world?
Again, just to echo previous remarks, Canada is very much and consistently seen as the gold standard in the globe. And again, both operators in terms of benchmarking and the regulator to regulator relations recognize this. And it holds true for the international audience as well as the transborder audience. So there's very little question about that. And in fact, I know that some of my other colleagues as well as myself are regularly invited to speak at aviation safety forums, in part because we bring forward the experience of working within the Canadian regime for aviation safety.
I would answer that by first explaining that the basis for safety management system internationally is enshrined within the ICAO standards and recommended practices. Within that document, within the various annexes, you will find a requirement for safety management system for states to include as part of their oversight. Some states choose to file a difference with ICAO and indicate that they have not incorporated or promulgated rules associated with safety management system, and other states will. What I can tell you is that when I do speak, as David does, and my other colleagues here in the International Forum, we are approached after our remarks to understand the effectiveness of our safety management system. How do you monitor the effectiveness? How do you build a safety and a hazard registry that's meaningful to not only your employee group but also to your management and those other stakeholders? Areas, so I'll leave my remarks at that, based internationally, but that's it varies across the world. But I could tell you that again, just very quickly reiterate that within Canada we're seen as the gold standard using David's.
Great, thank you. I'll go to a final question. Perhaps I'll pose this question to you, Mr. Wilson. Haven't heard from WestJet yet as part of this particular section of my questioning. Could you, just as an example of the airlines represented here, describe how WestJet promotes and enhances a culture of safety throughout your airline, from the front line all the way up to the president and CEO?
It might be the best way to sort of put that together is a question that was posed earlier as well about employee involvement, and we have numerous campaigns that we do. So obviously you need an employee group that feels comfortable, that feels safe about bringing forward hazards. That's how a system works. It's their identification, whether it be from personal injury perspective, such as occupational health and safety, or the larger hazards that are available in an operating environment. You know, we've got many campaigns that are very much directed towards the individual. Safety begins with me. You know, piece of the safety puzzle. There isn't a moment that they can't show up in the workplace and not see some sort of safety information in front of them, and encouraging that feedback to current to embolden the system and provide better safety barriers on an ongoing basis. So they're a huge piece. Culturally, when you look at WestJet, you know, when you look at our missions, visions, and values, you're going to find safety integrated in every one of those aspects.
Okay, on our side at Air Transat, the face-to-face meetings with employees is, I find, the best mean available to vehicle this message about safety. We do it through training programs that are ongoing on a yearly basis. So whether it's pilots, flight attendants, maintainers, we use every opportunity within the safety team to meet face-to-face and encourage them to participate, contribute to the system. We involve also the senior management in getting involved in all the results of our system. We keep them abreast of the developments, what we see, what we've done to correct things that we've identified. So from the top to the bottom, there's an overall focus on maintaining safety, as we all realize that this is really what ensures the viability of the company.
Okay, thank you very much. Now I'll move to Ms. Moran, 5 minutes.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. Merci à nos témoins. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you to our witnesses for being here today. I'll ask a straightforward question to begin with. We have a sense of this, but I'd like you to tell me what the hazardous materials that are transported by Canadian carriers are, whether in baggage compartments or elsewhere. There are several categories. There are batteries, gases, pharmaceutical products. Go ahead, colleagues. The OECE is very clear about materials that can be transported, the ICAO rather. For example, passenger and cargo freight. There are very strict guidelines. When it comes to each carrier, we make a determination, our own assessment as to what hazardous materials we will transport. We are primarily a passenger carrier, so we have additional restrictions on the types of hazardous materials that we refuse to carry. WestJet does not transport any dangerous materials. This is a choice based on risk evaluation, as Marc-Andre mentioned at the outset. Transportation of dangerous or hazardous materials by air is very highly regulated, very strict, and our safety management system enables us to carry out a risk analysis in-house and to determine whether we'll transport a particular type of hazardous material. Well, it's interesting that WestJet's here, given that you don't transport hazardous materials whatsoever. That strikes me as unusual. I'd like to ask another question that was suggested to us. I'd like to talk about flight attendants. You said that flight attendants contribute to airline safety. Perhaps this is the only opportunity we'll have to discuss this, because we haven't had an opportunity to invite flight attendants here. There's been a drop in the number of flight attendants in Canada. I'd like to ask Air Canada primarily, well, when we get aboard your aircraft, you say that safety is your priority, and we know that off by heart. How is it safer to reduce the ratio of flight attendants if that's your top priority? If I could just start with an answer. To begin with, when it comes to flight attendants, we are harmonizing our regulations with those of Europe. Well, for example, Australia has carried out in-depth studies in committee, and they've decided to keep their flight attendant ratio. They determined that it was safer to keep this ratio. So what I'd like to know is how it is safer to reduce this ratio. Well, I know that Transport Canada is reviewing this. And of course, the placement of flight attendants is important. What kind of studies do you carry out? Do you consult with experts? Well, we haven't carried out any studies per se. Perhaps Mr. Elfassi can respond. Can you tell me what kinds of studies you're carrying out? Who is questioned?
Relative to the reduction of...
Yeah.
Okay. The basis for the study goes back to working group committees that were held many years ago when this first issue was first raised. There was a comprehensive risk assessment that took place. That risk assessment included a number of various stakeholders, not only from industry but other groups within Transport Canada. They studied the regulatory regime in Europe, in Australia, in the United States. The risk assessment, in fact, went further. Without getting into the details of the risk assessment, they looked at the actual residual risk that would be associated with it, and they made decisions on how to mitigate that residual risk. It was the decision of that working group, which I won't go back into because I don't have the historical context, that harmonizing the rules internationally and across transborder.
Mais comme je vous disais, c'est pas vraiment un argument.
But as I said to you, that's not really a valid argument, given that Australia decided to not go forward with this and to apply their own rules for a 1:36 ratio. My riding is Notre-Dame de Grâce-la-Chine d'Orval. I have a lot of flight attendants in my riding who've told me that they are concerned.
Qui me disait qu'il était inquiet parce que dans un cas où il y aurait un accident, puis
that they were concerned because if there were to be an accident and a flight attendant didn't feel well, they'd be stuck because they wouldn't be able to assist. This has been seen previously. My question is, how would this be safer? You can't even tell me that it's going to be safer or not.
So WestJet currently is operating under exemption for 1 in 50 in Canada, and actually 1 in 50 has been used in Canada under exemption for many years in 50-seat aircraft. Aircraft certified under regulation in Canada are certified to 1 in 50. That's the international standard. When we speak of Australia, we look very closely at all regulatory jurisdictions. And although Australia may have on the books regulations for 1 in 36, they were the ones as a regulatory environment that set the stage for exemptions. And most carriers in Australia are operating under a 1 in 50 exemption, which is the international standard. Back to safety management systems, the entire intent before you make change, obviously we have a saying at WestJet, we do it with our people, not to them. So our flight attendants, back to the questions about incorporating the front line and their thoughts about it, they were actively involved in this adoption of change at WestJet. When we look a step further, safety systems are required to make decisions based on strong amounts of data. Across the world, there were only 2 regulatory jurisdictions not operating under 1 in 50. That was, to your point, Canada and Australia. So we have reams and reams of data, had lots of airlines to go to validate the safety of the change. And that's been proven as we've been operating in Canada at an equivalent level of safety since October of 2013 under 1 in 50.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Wilson. I'll move to Mr. Tote for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to our witnesses here today. I guess just to start with, I just want to state very clearly for the record, in regards to Ms. Moran's questioning, actually we had invited QP to join us at our meetings here, and they've refused to attend. So if this issue was so foremost in their minds, it's kind of strange that they would not be here to bring forward their viewpoint. However, I want to turn to the witnesses that we do have here today, and I wanted to talk about the transportation of dangerous goods some, and I know that Mr. Wilson, that you do not transport dangerous goods with WestJet, but some of the other airlines, I believe you do, and I'm just wondering what your parameters are for that. How do you assess the dangerous good? I'm assuming you also look much more rather than just at the dangerous good itself, but also how it's contained, how it's packaged, and how you contain that within the aircraft. Could you expand on that a little bit? Give us some sense of how you decide what dangerous goods you're going to transport, and also how you work within the context of, I'm sure, with your employees and with your staff, as to how that has to be contained, both within the containment of the unit itself, but also on the plane. Anybody?
I'll take a go at this. IATA publishes a very comprehensive manual publication relative to the transportation of dangerous goods. It's about 2.5 inches thick, and a very detailed description of what is permitted on board a passenger aircraft, what is permitted on an all-cargo aircraft, how it's to be packaged, and it provides all of the technical and scientific details specific to the product that's permitted to be transported based on the rules of transportation. That publication is used as a training program for our employees. Some of our employees are in the field of accepting the dangerous good. Others are in the field of handling that dangerous good in terms of boarding the dangerous good on board an aircraft. And others in terms of responding should there be an event associated with that good. So depending on the role of the employee, they are provided, again, comprehensive training that is reviewed by Transport Canada. They not only review the program, but they'll often sit in and actually observe the training sessions. So that manual is used to describe, and I'll give you an example, radioactive isotopes that are used in the medical industry are routinely shipped to various research centers and hospitals across the country and across the world. Sometimes radioactive items can only be placed in very specific areas of an aircraft cargo compartment, and our loading instructions detail to the employees where they're placed, how far away from the passenger, and how they're handled. They are labeled, they're documented, flight crew know that they're being carried on board, and further, flight crew have on board the aircraft a very detailed protocol on how to respond should there be an incident involving that dangerous good. And it's a checklist item that the flight crew use. So across the spectrum, depending on the role and responsibility of the employee, there's exhaustive training that is conducted.
to highlight the robustness of the regulatory framework around it as well. Even though WestJet is elected to be a non-DG carrier, so that we don't have holes in the system, Transport Canada still requires us to go through almost the same level of training on our frontline employees so that we have that awareness and don't provide that input. We're not consciously accepting it, but we've still got all the barriers in place so that collectively we have a very robust framework for dangerous goods. Again, we elect not to carry them, but we still provide a high level of training by regulation.
So there's an awareness even if something would
You'd have to know what isn't allowed so that you've got those same barriers that way, and that's what we provide.
Good. Mr. O'Rourke, in your answers to one of the questions regarding SMS, you said it's not only a compliance issue, but it's a two-way dialogue with the inspector that opens up that opportunity. And I know the question's been asked a little bit, but I think it's very important. How does that also work as far as your two-way dialogue with your employees? Like how deeply involved are they in not just the implementation, but actually involved in the building of your safety management systems and the upgrading and the continual renewal of those? Is there a system in place where the employees have the ability not only to bring forward issues regarding current things in the safety management system that they see need to be addressed, but to bring forward something new that should be looked at by the company? Is there a mechanism in place also for that?
I'll let carriers, but when it comes to kind of individual employees, but I do want to say that definitely one of the hallmarks again of an SMS approach is to encourage, is to make it easy, is to make it safe and confidential for employees to report things, and where you build this culture of safety at all levels.
I can comment on that, I don't want to let this day escape without clarifying one point, because it's an important, and perhaps it's the word and the nuance of the word. For us, safety and the word priority should not be confused with safety in a value system. We communicate safety as a value and not as a priority, because priorities often change. So safety is an utmost value to all of us within aviation. Now, I should say that every 2 years at Air Canada we conduct a very exhaustive survey of all of our employees. It's a very detailed survey, and I'm proud to say that typically when we all receive surveys, we tend to discard them, or we might generally not very much success in responding to it. We had a 37% response rate, which is quite significant for the number of employees that we have at Air Canada, which is that the information was meaningful. It allowed us to shape our goals and objectives, our safety goals and objectives for that calendar year. We take that information, we use various analytics in order to determine where the areas of strengths, where the areas of weakness and opportunities are. We communicate those back to our employees through town hall sessions, and we use it to shape our goals and objectives. And then we go back out and we try to explain to them the reasons why we took those decisions, and link it back to the feedback and the comments that were provided to the organization. They become part of the goals and objectives.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll now move to Mr. Sullivan, 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the witnesses. Mr. Wilson, you said something a few minutes ago that I wanted to correct. I think you said that you've been operating under an exemption for the past while and that it provides an equivalent level of safety. In fact, the representatives from Transport Canada said quite clearly 2 weeks ago that 1 in 50 is not an equivalent level of safety to 1 in 40, just for the record, because I, as a passenger, don't know when I'm on a plane whether the door I'm going to be next to is the one that's going to actually have a flight attendant assigned to it or not. So, I mean, if you were Ryanair, you'd be offering me a discount for sitting beside an unsafe seat. But you're not. The issue of whether it's equivalent is what's up for debate right now, and they said quite clearly it's not an equivalent level of safety at the Transport Canada level. But I want to come back to the notion of, someone mentioned aircraft maintenance, and Air Canada, and I believe perhaps Air Transat, have moved to systems where their maintenance is performed in another country of the airframe and the engines. And how are those individuals in those countries incorporated in your SMS? You said that you represent 40,000 employees. Those people you don't consider part of your employee base, I take it. Air Canada or Air Transat?
I may. Well, I can begin from our perspective. I guess we do use a service provider that's external for our main inspection program, and every single aircraft, once they return, they're being inspected by our own maintenance team, and whenever there are issues that are discovered as a result of the inspection, we follow up directly with the service provider, and they have to provide specific corrective measures and to put in place the quality program that's required to ensure the quality of their work. We have we have our own presence there as well on the ground to monitor the activities, and we have a periodic meeting with the management of this organization to review the record of incidents that were documented, and we follow up with them very closely to ensure that they put in place the corrective measures that will be effective.
But my question was, how are they involved in your corporate safety management system? They're not, because they're not your employees. Am I correct?
Well, the employees within this organization, they have their own, safety culture and reporting structure in place. So I'm not involved in that aspect, right. But definitely anything that is discovered as a result of this activity is followed up from our perspective internally at Air Transat.
But if somebody rebuilds an entire engine, you're not going to discover what went on in the center. Nobody in your inspection team is going to take apart that engine and check whether they used the right bolts.
No, but if there is an event later on that is related to the inspection that went on, the
right.
root cause was identified as a result of this inspection activity, then that's when we involve the service provider.
Same question, Air Canada. How do they involve in your safety management system?
So if the question is how are they involved in the safety management system, I don't want to leave you with the impression that they have a safety management system or they don't have a safety management system. I'm not going to comment on that. What I will comment on is that we have, at all of those bases where we conduct maintenance, we have embedded within and with those teams quality auditors, compliance officers to monitor the ongoing effectiveness of the work that they are doing. We have those at all places. Now, you should know that in our case, we have, in our maintenance organization, they have a certificate as well to operate. They have an AMO certificate, an approved maintenance organization. Now, that requires, under SMS, to have a very robust quality component. So we have them on site, they monitor and they feed back essentially reliability reports based on performance. But I should also add another element that we have included is that any aircraft that comes out of a maintenance facility is flown and operated by a dedicated group of pilots, and we refer to them as our non-revenue operation team. We do not put that aircraft into operation until that non-revenue team has had an opportunity to fly the aircraft and to test the reliability. As part of the effectiveness of that monitoring program, they feed back to us reports on the reliability and the performance of that aircraft. If we have an issue, we go back, we get it fixed, and we monitor effectiveness, and we do not hesitate to drop a maintenance organization if they fail to comply to the standards that we expect.
Okay, sorry, Mr. Sullivan, but your time is expired. Mr. Komarnicki, 5 minutes.
Before I get into my main line of questioning, just a question to any one of you there. The ratio of one flight attendant per 40 passengers changing to a ratio of one flight attendant per 50 passenger seats. I noticed one is in passengers, one in passenger seats. Can you maybe explain the differentiation there?
We'll also give you an opportunity to, although he's left the room at the moment, Mr. Sullivan had a question there that he get a chance to rebut to, and I wouldn't mind taking that opportunity as well. So first and foremost, if you look at an international standard, a 1 in 50 very much there is an equivalent standard to 1 in 40. To the discussion around the doors in particular, I'll use the 737-600. It only holds 119 guests or passengers. Guests is a WestJet vernacular. But whether it was 1 in 40 or 1 in 50, it's still required to carry 3 flight attendants. attendants. And so, of course, there would still be a door, without a flight attendant there. However, being a narrow-body aircraft, it's been proven time and time again that's not an issue. In a lot of ways, we find that we actually have better staffing on board the aircraft because 1 in 40 allowed it a flexibility piece. So you could have an aircraft with 4 doors. If you wanted only 80 passengers on board, you'd only be required under 1 in 40 for two passengers. 1 in 50 takes that operating flexibility away, and it always requires that an aircraft dispatch appropriately with the correct amount of flight attendants at all time. One less flight attendant has no means for that aircraft to move. So that's why we basically are very comfortable saying it's an equivalent level of safety. Looks slightly different, but there's no reduction in safety barriers or margins, or WestJet would not have entertained it whatsoever. And on behalf of our 2,600 hardworking flight attendants, I'd strongly suggest that they would have a stake in that game too. And that's our comfort from that, sir. I'm sorry I got a little off, but if that did not answer the question, if you'd like to restate something, I'd be happy to put that framework back into it.
Thanks. No, I think you've covered that aspect of it. I want to move to my main line of questioning, and this is in respect to safety management systems. From what I've been hearing from the evidence is that, of course, there are regulations relating to safety. On top of that, there's a safety management system, and so it's meant to augment what's already there, and it's more flexible, and I think someone referred to as holistic. And, of course, there was a survey that seems to go against that trend, but you did say there's some difficulty in getting a handle on measuring the survey or understanding exactly where it's going. But you did say that, and I think it was Mr. DeVoe that said, questioning the value of SMS is not a rational argument. And I think one other comment was made, higher risk because of SMS is an unfounded kind of a statement. I'm not sure who made that, perhaps Mr. O'Rourke. So can you just maybe indicate why you feel it's not a rational argument, Mr. DeVoe, and then why you feel it's unfounded? I think Mr. O'Rourke, and then I've got some questions flowing from that. Go ahead.
Absolutely, and respectfully with the comment, if you're doing the kinds of things you've always done with respect to safety, and you're augmenting that with additional, more sophisticated processes with a deeper oversight from the regulator, there is no way that the overall system could not be safer. And again, it's the difference between, if we were talking about a financial management system, doing something in a very individual, superficial way versus a complex organizational management framework to do it. So the rationality here is, and the other part of the rationality is the evidence. The evidence speaks for itself. We are living in the safest period of aviation that has existed, and safety management systems have been making inroads for a number of years here. So the combination of what the facts demonstrate and the plain fact that we have what we've been doing and we've augmented it with more sophisticated processes, we couldn't possibly have a situation that is less safe.
Did you want to make a comment, Mr. O'Rourke?
Please, yes. No, absolutely. Some of the language in that press release and the survey is completely irresponsible and unfounded. To suggest that accidents are imminent and planes are going to fall from the sky is completely unreasonable and unfounded. We can provide you with numbers. Aviation has never been safer. We talk about the millions of flights and the ratio of accidents. We can provide those after the session. But yeah, we will stand by that comment. As Mr. DeVoe said, aviation is the safest mode of transport. It's never been safer. And SMS is a big part of that.
Thank you. And of course, you're indicating that SMS involves proactively managing the risk, not just following rules and regulations. And so that dimension is added to it. I think it was you, Mr. O'Rourke, that said you seek to find an unknown risk. Now, when you have a risk, you know what it is and you can really work to fix it, or if you have an incident, you can work backwards. But I'm kind of curious if you can give me an example. How do you seek to find an unknown risk? Because A, it's unknown. And then you said digging into specific areas of concern is another aspect of safety management. Perhaps you could give us some examples of that.
I think a really good example of trying to identify an unknown risk are some of the proactive exercises that we conduct. When I say we, collectively conduct. One example would be something referred to as LOSA. LOSA is a line-oriented safety audit. And essentially, what it involves is taking trained observers, generally pilots, putting them in the flight deck and observing various behaviors of the flight crew in order to determine how those individuals manage various threats and various situations on board the airplane. That's a proactive activity that sometimes will uncover threats to the organization, but also the resiliency of the organization, behaviors that you want to manage. Part of the safety management system is taking all of these elements that I think David mentioned earlier, which is the LOSA, the audit, which is a proactive, the investigations, the reports that come from flight attendants and pilots and maintenance organizations. And all of that goes in order to give you a lens about what is going on within the organizations, where are those hazards, where are those risks, feeding them back through the organization so that they can manage those risks, and then monitoring for the effectiveness of those solutions. So it's an iterative process. But that would be an example of one which you will uncover because you don't know about it. It needs to be a proactive exercise. You just don't wait for it to happen.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Watson. 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. How many, other than WestJet on the 150 exemption, is there any other airline represented here that has a 1 to 50 exemption on flight attendants? Just WestJet?
Currently, Air Canada does not have an exemption, no.
So you've now had 7 months in that operating environment. Has your company done any of its own surveillance on as a follow-up to the implementation of the exemption, and what can you say based on that?
The promise we made to the Minister as part of incorporating the exemption was the fact that the safety management system required to provide that oversight as well. We've had surveillance activity with Transport Canada inspectors on board as well through the implementation. So we take a look at the data. One of the better things I'll point to, and it's tied nicely with our requirements of the Labour Code as well, but 2 of the 7 months have been the lowest months for flight attendant injuries ever in the history of WestJet. And so there's a lot of data that comes back when we talk to flight attendants on board. In fact, on the flight out here yesterday, I served with the flight attendants to have discussions ongoing, and we get continued positive feedback on 150.
Your testimony just now, you said Transport Canada itself has been part of the post-implementation surveillance?
We just actually came out of one of the large assessment activities, so 1 in 50 was part of that oversight, so a complete assessment that basically started back in call November with the off-site activities, culminating in February. We also see anytime in-flight cabin safety inspectors travel on the airlines, they travel on the back and they do observation activities, which they report back to the airline on.
Your post-implementation surveillance, I'm talking about WestJet's now, presumably a report has been commissioned or some sort of report was made about that. Is any of that able to be tabled in terms of the analysis with the committee?
That's all ongoing. So we use something similar to what Sam spoke to, the LOSA. We use the Cabin Operations Safety Audit, or COSA. So we have flight attendants who are on board all the time looking to see how flight attendants operate in the environment and ensure that all the procedures, that there's been no reduction in safety margins.
Back to SMSs in general for the airline industry, do each of your companies have a designated executive whose primary responsibility is safe operations? And are the duties and responsibilities of that particular executive very clearly defined? I'm seeing heads nodding. I just want each of the companies to sort of answer very briefly about that.
In Jazz's case, that would be myself, understanding, of course, that the accountable executive, which includes the responsibilities under safety, is the President and CEO.
Okay. Mr. Elfassi.
So our President and CEO is designated the accountable executive. You should know that in selecting an accountable executive, the Transport Canada provides essentially a flow chart that determines whether or not that person can actually be nominated. The ultimate decision maker, based on the resources and the financing of the organization, rests with the President and CEO. They're ultimately responsible, and they delegate the maintenance and the monitoring of our safety management system to myself.
Mr. Wilson.
Sort of the same situation, going through the flow chart. The President and Chief Executive Officer is the one who is the accountable executive under the regulation for WestJet. And then, of course, certain duties and responsibilities are delegated out. However, the actual accountability cannot be delegated away.
Mr. Mignot.
And it's exactly the same at Air Transat, with the CEO being the accountable executive, and I am basically mandated by the Chief of Operations and Chief of Maintenance, who are ultimately responsible for the safety of their own operations. So I'm there to assist them in managing the systems so that they get the information and the follow-up to any incidents.
How do you overcome siloing? That is there are mandated components that comprise a safety management system. How do you overcome that to have a full systems approach to safety? How do you resist the tendency to sort of silo within a component?
Precisely in our system, there is no silos. Everything is intertwined. My safety team is integrated from all the sectors, and we work together. For a single event, it may warrant investigation on various aspects, whether it's flight operations, cabin operations, maintenance. So whatever is involved in this particular incident is collected within this investigation. So everything is very much interlinked, and there is no silos at all.
I'd strongly suggest that if you look at the requirements for safety management systems, that the ability to remove and break down silos is what its greatest strengths. It looks for that, and if you don't have that naturally occurring within your airline, transport will be there to ensure that with the expectations set out, that you have committees, et cetera, the availability to ensure that it's not operating in a siloed approach. It's meant to be very holistic throughout the organization.
Your other time. Okay, we're coming down to the end of our meeting, but we still have some time. We're going to go to Mr. Mai, but I'm going to be very strict on the time for everyone.
Sure.
5 minutes for the question and the answer.
Perfect. Thank you, Chair. Just to answer Mr. Komarnicki's question with respect to the survey, it was done with inspectors, employees of Transport Canada, who actually enforce Canada's air safety regulations. So when these people, 85% of them, say that air travelers are exposed to higher risk, I mean, here we are as regulators just to make sure that the system that is in place is the safest way. I think we all agree, and I'm sure the airline industries also agree on that. So that's why we have questions, and especially when we saw what happened on the rail safety. Obviously, you've followed with us what happened in Lac Mégantic. So there were fault in the system. It is the same thing. SMS. We heard from railway companies saying, well, it's the safest thing. But when we look at it, then we realize it was meant to be as a layer. And I think you all mentioned it. It was meant to be as an additional protective layer. But what we've seen is on the ground, there is problem with respect to inspections. When I talked about the fact that we have less inspectors with Transport Canada to look at some of the issues, I don't necessarily agree that Transport Canada has done everything and even more than it's supposed to. I mean, even the Auditor General has said that. So my question, when we come back to SMS, for instance, when we look at the change of ratio, because we spoke about it today for flight attendant ratio, are flight attendants being involved in the SMS that would come after that? You say yes, but when I was there and Mike Sullivan was there at Carac, I don't think we've heard any flight attendant said that would increase safety. So that's my concern. When you say that you're working with your employees, but then we hear about the employees not being satisfied and saying that there is a higher risk, then that's why we ask questions. So for instance, for the reduced flight attendance ratio, how involved are the flight attendants in terms of...
Flight attendants at WestJet are involved very closely with any operational change. That's again one of the tenets of a strong safety management system. Is one of the components or the expectations is that you have strong processes around safe management of change. Change management is tough for everyone. Inspectors and employees alike within airlines and within transport. When we looked at implementing 1 in 50, obviously the comfort came and the availability of data to speak to flight attendants from around the world. And I'd suggest if we cross the border in the FAA jurisdiction or Europe, they operate under 1 in 50 exclusively and have for years. I think that they would be very much aligned with us, whether they don't see that necessarily is tied to safety having a 1 in 40 versus 1 in 50. Our equivalency, quite comfortable with that from a safety perspective. anytime we do organizational change at WestJet, we use a lean process, back to Japanese sort of culture. Our employees are included in the change. So basically, since they're the one that do the frontline job, we ensure that they're encouraged to have their voice heard on the procedures and processes that do on a day-to-day basis. So as that is a starting point, we ensure that they get that opportunity. And then, of course, once the process is identified, we're required to follow up from efficiency through our COSA audits, et cetera. So we ensure that we ensure that you know, their voices are heard, and then basically the processes are changed. They've got a great ownership on the front line of the safety and the ownership of the process they're involved with.
Could I just be clear on something? When we talk about assessing risk, risk is a continuum, of course, and safety is not an absolute. And one of the hallmarks of SMS is that it's not about emotion, it's not about perception, it's about fact and evidence. So when we look at any scenario, and this is just one scenario, what we're looking at is what evidence there is of hazard or risk, and if we change something, what does it do to that risk, and you know, what can we do to mitigate it? So you know, at the end of the day, that's what the exercise is about. It's not about absolute safety, because everyone in this room, if they take an automobile to get back to their homes today, will be at infinitely more risk than they ever are on an airplane. So it's about understanding what that risk is and whether or not it's acceptable or not.
Well, that's one of the questions that we had, because we never got the chance to really look at that change. And I mean, as parliamentarian, and I think there was talk within the industry, but we haven't been able as regulators to actually look at all the facts and all the studies and things that will make us sure and reassure us that, you know, there's not late safety. Also, one of the concerns that I have, and that would be more for Transport Canada, but you know, when we go from 2010 to 2014-15, the target rate for accident rate target per 100,000 flight hours has actually increased. They went from
Mr. Mai, your time has expired.
From 6.3 to 6.7.
Mr. McGinney, 5 minutes.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Gentlemen, I just want to ask a few snappers. So if you have the answer, please. If you don't, just let me know. You all say that you have a very hand-in-glove relationship with Transport Canada. You work together. It's an ongoing basis. You have a relationship. You manage that relationship well. So let me ask you, can any of you tell us how many inspectors there are right now at Transport Canada for air safety? Qualified inspectors?
Well, we have the ones that are directly appointed to the WestJet file, so I can speak to the ones that we interact with on a regular basis.
Do you have just let me know. Do you know how many inspectors there are at Transport Canada for air safety?
So transport as a whole? Yeah. I cannot, sir.
Okay. Do you know how often aviation companies are supposed to be inspected by Transport Canada?
There is some guidance under SUR 001 version 5.
And what would that be?
So basically that's specific to the safety management system, and I believe it shows that there should be a full scale or you know, an inspection roughly every 3 years, I believe, David. I don't have the document in front of me, so I don't want to get too much into specifics. But that's from the safety management side.
But to supplement that,
there are different types of inspections.
Just make it quick, guys, if you could.
Yeah, to supplement that, though, there are different levels. So it's risk-based, as we've mentioned before. So it's incumbent on Transport Canada to evaluate the need to look at the pieces as well on a much greater frequency.
Okay, so the Auditor General's report says that the inspection frequency at Transport Canada, that Transport Canada calls for annual inspections. And quote, we also found that although the national planning frequencies state that aviation companies must be inspected every year, about 70% of aviation companies across the country were not inspected in 2010-2011. Goes on to say that Transport Canada has assessed the risk indicators for the 5 very large air carriers and associated maintenance organizations, for the other 70 large air carriers and maintenance organizations, and about 4,000 small air carriers and maintenance organizations. The department did not often use the standard risk indicators. So Canadians who are watching and who fly in your airlines, again, are you not supposed to be inspected annually?
Well, I guess it comes back to what I think Dave was trying to bring out as far as inspection. So if you take a look at a full assessment of a safety management system, that happens roughly every 3 years. Right. I think if you look back, though, the old national audit in the pre-SMS days, though, was only, I believe, once every 5 years, and my counterparts can chime in that
that's
way.
Great.
We do see inspections, sir, on an almost daily basis. So, I mean, on our flight decks.
Let me ask you another question, if I could, specific to WestJet. Does WestJet carry dangerous goods?
No, sir. We're not certified to carry dangerous goods.
Why not?
It's been a choice from a corporate perspective.
So do other airlines represented here carry dangerous goods?
The other three, too, are certified, too.
Are all certified, too.
Yes.
So WestJet's never sought certification to carry dangerous goods?
Not at this time. We continue to monitor it.
Okay. On the 140 to 150, 140 flight attendant ratio question, a lot of Canadians are concerned and they're confused. Many of them who sit in emergency exits don't understand why they're being asked to pay a premium for the privilege of assisting. They pay more for the privilege of assisting if there's a problem. A lot of people have raised that with me, but I want to raise with you a juxtaposition here. How much, if I could, how much will each of your companies save financially? Mr. Wilson, starting with you, just a quick number. How much will you save moving from 140 to 150?
I don't have a number directly in front of me, sir, and again, my responsibilities are about the safety of the airline.
Does anybody here have a number? Air Canada? No? You don't know what you're going to save? Okay. Can you comment on the fact that Canadians are now taking 5 million flights a year from United States airports? Absolutely. That number is going up 10 to 15% each and every year under the Conservative government. And this is, of course, having a major, major economic boom effect for U.S. airports. Why is that happening?
Absolutely, but that we could actually have a whole day on that,
sure.
Mr.
And what can we do? What can we do to actually arrest this trend?
Well, we can look at the way we treat the sector.
Point of order, Mr. Watson.
An interesting economic question, but this committee's been convened to deal with safety issues.
Absolutely.
Safety management system and the transportation of dangerous goods. I don't see an obvious link to that. Maybe Mr. McGinty would like to get to that, Mr. Chair.
So we'll continue. You just got a few seconds, 40 seconds left, Mr.
I'll provide the link, Mr. Chair, if you wish.
Well, if you can do that, certainly.
Absolutely. There's a connection between consumers' choices in terms of where they fly and their perception of safety. There are all kinds of links. If Mr. Watson wants to explore those, we can do that on or offline. It's up to him, but I think it's a very important question, Mr. Chair.
Well, you still haven't linked it, but...
Let's be clear, though. The suggestion that Canadians are going to U.S. airports because of safety. It's a cost issue, so that has to be perfectly clear. We can reconvene on that if you'd prefer, but there's no suggestion that people are going for cheaper fares because of safety.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Watson or Mr. Komarnicki? Watson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. O'Rourke, for the clarification on that particular point. Canadian aviation regulations, they compel your companies to conduct risk assessments and submit them to Transport Canada? I see some heads nodding.
Yes,
okay.
absolutely. Absolutely.
There's also a written record that needs to be incorporated here. That's why I'm asking the question.
Every time there's a change, we are required to do a safety case internally and present that.
Well, how do they define that change? At what point is it every minor change? Is it only major? How do the regulations determine it's a change that has to, for the public who are listening, a change that requires a risk assessment?
I'll put a couple of points out there. It can be as simple as a change to an operating procedure would go through a risk assessment to something as broad as taking on a new destination. And there'd be varying levels, obviously, of the complexity of the risk assessment that would have to be conducted.
How frequent are those mandated risk assessments being conducted sort of company by company? I imagine it would vary. There would be some variability based on changes in operations too, but
they happen daily within the operational units for their change, and then it gets rolled up to be larger risk assessments at higher levels in the organization for broader changes.
Is every risk assessment mandated to be submitted with Transport Canada, or are there some that are simply internal?
Not submitted, but it's all available under the normal oversight process.
Okay. Recommendations for the committee. Obviously, we're going to be looking at whether there can be enhancements to the safety management system, as well as the transportation of dangerous goods regime. That's what this committee is tasked with when we look at the aviation sector, not just rail, marine, or by truck. A brief answer now, but we'd appreciate something, if you would wish, in terms of follow-up in writing. That would be a little more comprehensive than what you can provide at the table today. But what recommendation would you be making to this committee about how safety management systems or the TDG regime could be enhanced?
I would just say to embrace the change with safety management systems. and really to help clarify for the Canadian public some of the misinformation and mischaracterizations that are out there with respect to SMS, because it really speaks to the confidence the traveling public should have in what is the world's safest aviation environment.
Any others who want to handle that question? No?
Sorry,
go ahead.
I can just answer that. I would say in terms of improvement is understanding how important the data that we are collecting is and how that data is used. The benefit over the last many years, based on the systems that we're introducing, is to provide what I refer to as a high-definition picture of what is going on within an operation, so that you can focus your efforts and your interventions on the system in the right place. That has fundamentally changed the way airlines operate. That data is important because it takes us to where the problems are. I should say, though, on the risk assessment, I just want to make a point, which is the importance of a risk assessment in all of our operations should not be underestimated. We conduct them to the point that was made earlier, literally on a daily or weekly basis. There might be a small risk assessment to a more exhaustive risk assessment. In a high reliability industry like aviation, you do not want to introduce unintended consequences. So that's why we take our risk assessments quite seriously, so that we can identify any of the residual risk that is left and try to mitigate that risk. Because at the end of the day, you don't want to do any harm, and risk assessments play an important role in the safety oversight that the organization has.
In the rail sector, this is sort of moving to one of the things that came up as a result of the Auditor General's report on the rail sector. You raised some concern about whether rail inspectors had any potential conflict of interest because they may have been employed previously in the rail sector before coming to the regulator. Is that a question of concern for the aviation sector? Is there any concern that there may be conflict of interest among Transport Canada aviation inspectors for the same reason?
No. To be perfectly honest, I don't know the background and experience of all the inspectors, but I can't imagine that that would be an issue. There's a lot of air carriers. There's probably more carriers than there are rail companies, but that would not be an issue unless if someone wants to.
I would just add that our experience is that they're all very professional, and we'd have no such concerns.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Komarnicki. 5 minutes.
Thank you. One of the things we've heard from others is that when you have a safety management system, I mean, on paper it may look good, but there's the issue of actual implementation. I think somebody mentioned that earlier, and that there's a maturation process as time goes on. I wondered, have you noted that in the airline industry, and can you maybe comment on how you've seen it progress from paper to where it is today? Mr. DeVoe, I guess. Mr. Officier.
Sure. I think for all the carriers here, the NAC carriers, our SMS programs have gone through numerous iterations in time because we have some time under our belts here, and there's definitely been a maturing of the programs, and in fact we can much more often now see a direct link between outcomes. Somebody mentioned before, injury rates, for example, working back and being able to demonstrate that the reason that happened was the SMS system itself. And that's a key point here, because this is what Transport Canada does in their oversight role. They want to see the link. They want to see how the processes you have in place have actually had a causal effect on some sort of worthwhile outcome. So certainly with Jazz, we've been able to demonstrate that perhaps it was a result of a risk assessment and something we did there, or the result of a communication campaign. So that's a sign of the maturity, is when you can start to show that the system is what made the change.
Mr. Alfasi, do you have a comment? Or?
I would simply say, I mean, it's a very, very good point, because one thing that we've communicated over the last few years, based on surveys that we've conducted of our employees, is that safety is not delivered by paper. It's not delivered by rules and regulations. It's delivered by people, because people deliver safety and they're responsible for it. So it's putting a face and putting a clear understanding of the roles and the expectations of all the airline employees, whether they be a customer service agent, a flight attendant, and a mechanic. What is their role in the system, and how do they contribute to the system to ensure that we are managing our efforts as safe as we can? So it's removing the complexities, it's removing the barriers that often are challenging in understanding what your role is.
I know and also heard that involving the employees or getting them engaged is sometimes
that's critical. The communication process and the awareness is critical in the success or the failure of a safety management system. Everyone needs to understand their role. I agree.
Now, of course, there's a concern that there might or might not be retribution if an employee brings an issue forward or not, and all of that. But do you have internally either training sessions or seminars or involvement in employees to sort of go over what safety management systems are, what they're not, what they're meant to do, and sort of get a comfort level to the employees to become fully engaged as opposed to looking at it from a distance? Go ahead.
Could I mention three things? First is that very much every employee has training with respect to SMS, the expectations, the main policies. But we also can gauge and measure whether or not employees believe that. One way is through the reporting rates. And the reporting rates from frontline employees have exploded throughout the implementation of SMS, which tells you something initially is that they are comfortable enough to come forward and report. And incidentally, we have minute percentage of reports that are anonymously submitted. And the other thing, as someone else mentioned here, we also do annual surveys which ask questions about their trust of the system and the non-punitive system, and we get very high marks from employees indicating that they understand how it works and they trust it.
Have you any definitive report that said, look, we made an assessment of how our safety management systems are working, and as of today, here's how we've assessed it?
Internally?
Yes.
Internally, we have our own internal audit program, so we evaluate ourselves, the components of SMS, but as an IOSA airline, we also have external views on our SMS, and of course, there's a Transport Canada oversight. So we have a lot of sources that validate that the program's effective and evolving.
A little bit of time. Just one area that was raised was the transportation. Pardon?
Second. So.
Dangerous goods. Now, in previous hearings, we talked about liability insurance. Is there any issues in terms of carrying sufficient insurance, or is that a factor at all for the airline industry? Liability insurance?
No, not to my understanding.
All right, I guess that would take care of my time.
Mr. Wilson, just to follow up, there was a number of questions brought up today about WestJet's exemption going from a ratio of 1:40 and 1:50, and I know that we've all flew on a number of international airlines for whatever reasons, and I know that a lot of them that come in here, if not all of them, all have been operating for years, more or less an advantage, competitive advantage when they come into Canada with the ratio 1:5. What my question is, has your company, since the exemption, experienced any safety-related issue because of the exemption, or do you know of any other company that regularly flies into Canada that has had a safety issue because of the fact that they're using that 1:50 ratio? Could you comment on that, please?
Yeah, we've certainly experienced no safety issues operating on a 1:50 vice 1:40. In fact, as we've stated before, quite easily an equivalent level of safety, and we see many benefits that provide extra safety barriers that we're watching. As far as the international standard, when we reviewed, nothing that pointed directly towards a concern around operating 1:50. As I said, it's the operational standard. When you look at the percentage of flights that operate under that regulatory jurisdiction versus in Canada or the United States, it far outweighs from a data perspective.
Okay, thank you very much. And we are down to our last minute, about 2.5, 3 minutes, Ms. Moran, and one more on this side.
Oui. Mais en fait, je voulais juste revenir.
I'd like to come quickly back to what Mr. Wilson said earlier, but I really don't have a question. I'd just like to reiterate something. When you spoke about the Australian authorities and the exemption, Well, there was an exemption in 2010 on some types of aircraft developed for a ratio of 1 to 50, so not all aircraft. So the committee in 2011 issued recommendations for the government, which were upheld. Recommendation 6 from the Civil Aviation Authority.
To the 1:36 cabin crew ratio currently mandated by the Civil Aviation Order, and that all exemptions to the order currently in place not be renewed upon expiry. Et la recommandation 7 that the 1:36 retained until such a time that it can be demonstrated that a change to 1:50 cabin crew ratio in Australia will not result in reduced levels of safety or security. Ça, c'est ce qui s'est passé en Australie. C'est un commentaire. Maintenant, je vais laisser.
That's just a comment for you, and I'll ask my colleague to finish.
Wilson, most of your fleet, in fact, will have one less flight crew. The 737-700s and the 800s all have a passenger ratio that will cause you to have 4 where you used to have 5, or 3 where you used to have 4. It's only the 600s that have 119 seat. Am I correct?
That's correct, partially, sir. So, I mean, the challenge would be any one day, even an 800 could operate with 2 flight attendants under 1 in 40 if there were only 80 guests on board.
Yes, exactly. And the final question for all of you, there's been some controversy recently about the use of wet leases and temporary foreign pilots by airlines. I don't know if any of you are employing temporary foreign pilots, except maybe Air Canada Rouge might be, I'm not sure. But the public is concerned about the nature of how are those people involved, if they are, in a safety management system when they're temporary and they're foreign?
Well, we have made submissions with respect to the wet lease policies and temporary foreign workers. I guess I'll maybe let Dave comment on the safety of. But as far as our airlines, the safety management system is again a company-wide system, and it should capture all the operations.
We are just out of time. I understand that Conservatives don't want their minute. I'm just going to give the witnesses 2 minutes to. Do you have a point of order or something? Sorry?
I do, yes, Mr. Chair.
A point of order?
Correct. Just through you, Mr. Chair, I'm wondering if we could ask the witnesses if they're prepared to table for the committee on the basis of a question I put to them earlier, which they were incapable of answering, or perhaps through the National Airlines Council of Canada, whether we could get, for our deliberative purposes here, an indication from each of the airlines what the financial implications are for each company moving from 1 to 50 to 1 to 40 flight attendants, the savings, the costs, the negligibility, whatever it might be. Through you, could we ask the witnesses, and are they prepared to deliver that up?
Okay, I'll leave that with them if they're.
I'll leave here, and we'll discuss it, and we'll get back to. We'll undertake to consider that request.
Okay, and 2 minutes just to any closing comments. Allow that.
Well, I really just want to thank you again. We do sincerely appreciate the opportunity to be here. Hopefully, we were able to clarify some of maybe the misconceptions of SMS. Our airlines are incredibly passionate about this. Safety is the most important thing for an airline, and SMS is a great tool to enhance that. And thank you again for having us.
Okay, thank you very much, gentlemen, all of you, for being here. Meeting adjourned.